So the next example, example 1, I guess the first example, plays off of what we were just talking about. Are you comfortable going between degrees and radians and degrees? Well, if it's one of those nice angles like pi over 4 or pi over 3, it's not bad to do, but sometimes we get angles that are not nice angles, meaning not on the unit circle, not one of those angles, and we still have to be able to do it. So what this all uses is this uses the fact that we know without a doubt that pi is the same thing as 180 degrees. And so that tells me pi over 180 degrees, since those are the same thing, and anytime you divide something like 5 over 5, because they're the same numeric value, they are the same value, that's the number 1, right? Okay. So pi over 180 degrees, because pi is 180 degrees, is 1. Likewise, we could do 180 degrees over pi is the same thing as 1 as well. So when we do conversions, what we need to do is multiply by 1. We don't want to change the size of something, we just want to multiply by 1. So look at this one right here. If we start off in degrees, 40 degrees, if I don't want to change it, I still need to multiply it by a 1. I'm going to do pi over 180 degrees. Why did I choose pi over 180 degrees? I chose pi over 180 degrees because I want the degrees to simplify. So in our calculator, we're going to do 40 times pi divided by 180, and then hit enter, and I'm getting a value of 2 pi over 9. What's nice about our calculators, the TI-30XS multi-view calculator that I recommended for this course, is it will simplify all these fractions for us. So you don't have to do any more math, it's going to do it for you. Very, very nice, convenient feature of the calculator. Okay, so let's convert 540 degrees to radians. Again, we would take 540 degrees, we would multiply this by, well, 180 degrees has to go on bottom, pi has to go on top. So in my calculator, I'm going to do 540 times pi, and then for the division, by the way, I'm using the n over d button to make it a fraction. There's an n over d button on the calculator. Hit that, and now I can put in 180 and hit enter. This gives me a total of 3 pi. So the answer would be 3 pi. There's something else that I want you to do real quick to verify these. What I want you to do is make sure that you are in radian mode. So read this technology for me right here, and it tells you exactly how to get into radian mode. You hit the mode button, and then you go to the right and you select radians and you hit enter. Okay, so I'm going to quit out of that, and now if you look, I could just, for that exact same problem that I just did and the previous problem, I could type in 540. Now that I'm in radian mode, I'm going to hit 540. I'm going to hit that second probability button. So what I'm looking at is this right here. I'm going to hit the second probability button to get to the angles. I'm going to hit enter to select degrees. So my calculator right now looks like, let me come back up here. My calculator looks like the original problem. It just says 540 degrees. Hit enter, and notice it converts it to 3 pi for us. So our calculator has this feature, multiplying by pi over 180 degrees, built right in. Okay. Now on a test, you need to show work for every single problem. The problem would be, how do you convert 540 degrees to a radians? Then I'd have to show this work. But if this isn't the problem, if 540 degrees is just a part of the problem, for instance, if you want cosine of that number, then you wouldn't have to show this work. You could just directly use the calculator to do this. Okay, so because the entire point of the problem is converting, I'm going to go ahead and show you the math, but again, you could just directly type this into the calculator. So negative 270 degrees, how do I convert that? Well, I do 180 degrees in pi on top because I want my degrees to cancel. So in my calculator, I'm going to do negative 270 times, again, I hit the n over d button. On top, I'm hitting pi. I hit the down arrow. Now I'm hitting 180. I hit enter, and I end up with negative 3 pi over 2. So negative 270 degrees is the exact same measure as negative 3 pi over 2. If you notice, whenever we talk about measures, if I said, again, back to my earlier comparison, feet and meters, we would always label our answer. If I said 2, you would have to say 2 feet, ft, or 2 meters, 2m. Well, with angles, if it is a degree, we label it. So if it's 40, we would put 40 degrees. If it's radians, like 2 pi over 3 radians, we actually don't write the word radians. So that's one of the very few units, angles, measured in radians that I could think of where you actually don't write the label. The label is radians. And if you look in the next one, do you see how they write radians every single time? You would never do that in a real problem. You would never write negative pi over 2 radians. It is always presumed when you're talking about angles, if there is no label, if it doesn't say radians, then that measure is in radians. Otherwise, it needs that degree symbol there to be in degrees. Okay, so let's look. How do we go the other direction? What if I want to go from radians to degrees? This one's a little more difficult. So it's not more difficult in terms of, the only reason I'm saying it's a little more difficult is because the previous ones we could have just directly put into our calculator, but going the other directions, it doesn't work quite so well. So here we actually do need to use the conversion formula. So the way I'm going to look at this is negative pi over 2. And then again, here we have radians. So here I need radians down and bottom, knowing that pi radians is the same thing as 180 degrees. So now my radian measure, even though I'm not writing the word radians, technically the radians would cancel from the top and from the bottom, right? So in my calculator, I'm going to do n over d, the n over d button. I'm going to type in negative pi, make sure you hit the negative button, not subtraction, over 2. I'm going to hit the right arrow, and then I'm going to go times the n over d button again, and I'm going to do 180 over pi, hit enter, and I'm getting negative 90. So this would be negative 90 degrees. Let's do the last one, or the next one, which is 2 radians. Again, if we start off with 2 radians, I need to divide radians on the bottom. Pi was the measure of radians, degrees on top, 180 degrees on top. So I'm going to do 2 times 180 over pi. And this one's going to give me a decimal approximation, and that's okay. Let's go ahead and round to 2 decimal places. I'm getting an approximation of 114.59 degrees. So it's about 114.59 degrees. So 2 radians is a nice measure, but in terms of degrees, it's not quite so nice. And again, that is an approximation, that's not exact. Let's try the next one, 9 pi over 2 radians. So here I'd have 9 pi over 2. I need to divide it by pi radians and 180 degrees on top. Remember, I'm just mathematically multiplying by a 1 here. I'm going to do my simplification in my calculator. No need to do it by hand, just use your calculator. So I'm going to do 9 pi over 2, hit the right arrow, times, I'm going to do the n over d button again, the 180 over pi. I hit enter, and I'm ending up with 810 degrees on this one. Okay. So again, technology, it says most graphing utilities have a degree in radian modes. You should learn how to use your graphing utility to convert from degrees to radians and vice versa. It says for the TI-30XS multi-view, which is the calculator we use in this class, that's the calculator I'm going to teach with this entire time. It says we change the mode by pushing the quit mode button. It says mode. And then DEG stands for degree mode, and RAD stands for radian mode. So to verify the answers in example 1, I showed you exactly what to do. Make sure you select the mode into radians. And I'm not going to lie, I always keep my calculator, the entire semester, I keep it in radian mode. So if I ever want to find something like, let me back up. If I ever want to find something like the cosine of, I don't know, let's say 30 degrees, I can find it when I'm in radian mode as long as I hit this button right here, that second probability for angle, and then enter for the degree symbol. So if you are in degree mode and you try typing in a radians, it will not work. But if you're in radian modes, it works for radians and it also works for degrees. So that's why I always leave my calculator in radian mode the entire semester. Anytime I want a degree, I just enter the degree right there. So here are some important values for you guys to memorize. If you look here, 0, 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, 135, 150, 180, these are all numbers that we already did. We did these on the previous page where I showed you the conversions between each one of those. So the only new ones, well, this one, the 360 is 2 pi, was also one. So the only one that we didn't have is the 270 degrees is 3 pi over 2. So there are some other angles that I'll have you memorize as well, and I'm going to show you those on the unit circle shortly, but the only new one in this chart for you is 270 degrees is 3 pi over 2. And these are the ones that you really need memorized. These are the important angles that we're going to be using regularly. The vast majority of time when you actually evaluate a trig function will be at one of these angles. So these are the conversions I want you to know. Be comfortable with degrees, radians, and going between them.